We have the Alconte Crianza 2009. So now
This
we're going to a
is
different style of vintage.
they're going to a near perfect vintage. This is probably as perfect a vintage as you'll find. This in '04. I hope that you can taste what I'm talking about the through line. There's just something incredibly special about '09, and it's every '09 I've tasted has had this. And it's a, I don't know what else you would call it, just something really intense. It's like that special child. It just has the bright light that,
This is the Prodigy.
you try not to call them your favorite child, but
So this is Crianza as well. And in a vintage like '09, you can buy Crianza, you can cellar it for a decade.
easily.
Easily.
You should be able to. In '09, I would go almost 20 years on this. I think the '09s, not every vintage obviously can handle that, but the '09s, yes.
So Kovac has asked if head trained vines are typical in Ribera VT.
Head trained. I guess are you talking about
Not
bush vine?
trellised.
You're talking about trellised.
Not trellised.
Not trellised. You have a lot of bush vines through just because that's what existed. I mean, vines have been planted here since the Romans. And you have a lot of old vineyards. Trellising was brought in really in the '70s with Alejandro Fernandez, and people fought it. Spain is very traditional, and so you have this tradition of we only do it this way, we only do it that way. He brought in the first trellising, and then people said, okay, this will work, so they started working with it. But yes, about 50%, I'd say, of vineyards are still old bush vines. Not all are successful. It's very hard to have a bush vine vineyard in Ribera because of the wind. The wind will just blow them over.
You don't want that stretched out canopy acting as a kite.
Exactly, and trying to establish them. I mean, when we were there, you're driving through, you would see the bush vine vineyards, and like every fourth vine is missing because it gave up the ghost and couldn't handle it.
So when those vineyards are being replanted, are they being replanted head trained?
Yes, they're being planted trellis. It just makes more sense financially to do trellis.
Sure, tends to. But there's got to be some people out there who are stubborn and
yes, and
there's that pride thing.
And there's the pride thing, and there's the stubbornness, and then there's reality of we have to have product. It's very hard. Those old head trained vines, you literally needed a full staff of people who could baby each vine to make sure it was there and take care of each one. When one fell over, you had to stick there to tie it up.
It was a family business.
It was a family business.
So you had a family of kids who would go out there year after year. They would learn this vine needs more help, this vine needs less help. And
you're finding that, and also trellising allows you to grow your vines higher off the ground, so you eliminate even the least bit of humidity. Bush vines have to be grown close to the ground. They cannot handle any height. And you also have a certain amount of, eventually we'll have mechanical picking. It's happening everywhere else in the world where it's possible. They're moving into mechanics, and that has to be at a certain height.
Sure, has to be.
And you cannot mechanically pick a bush vine.
No, you can't. You can't do that. So a couple of questions. Does everybody irrigate? I would imagine that's a rarity.
Very, very few. I only saw 1 or 2 vineyards that had irrigation equipment set up. It's not just buying the water, and you do have to buy your water. It's not like
setting
here.
Up the system.
It's setting up the system. Here in the States, irrigation equipment for a vineyard is between $1,500 to $2,000 an acre. Spain is a good 30 to 40% higher than that, and then you have to buy your water. So you're talking about a huge expense that unless you're a big corporation, Abadia Retuerta, I shouldn't talk about them, but they are just outside in Sardo del Duero. They have irrigation through the whole thing. They are owned by a huge Swiss conglomerate who have the money to support that. They can put it in. Very few winemakers in Ribera del Duero have that kind of funding behind them, or they don't want to step into that irrigation process. Vegas and Thelia could do it. There's no way they would ever cross that line.
Sure.
Never.
They have.
Also, plus their topography, because they're down along the lowest level next to the river, they don't need to. Fernandez irrigates in his very, very top vineyards up on the high mesa, but that gets the least amount of water. And he will irrigate in the spring to build up the groundwater
Keep them alive.
To keep them alive and give them a head start, and that's it.